Hello, welcome to the One Place in Conversation podcast, episode 15. This time we're talking about World Mental Health Day. Today, 10th of October, 2024. And I have a special guest host with us today. I'm here with Andy. Hello, Andy, which some of you will recognize.
Hello, Sophie. Yep, I'm Andy Murphy. I work at One Place East as a talent network facilitator, which sounds a bit fancy. The role involves working within network, working with One Place East, working with people who have been out of work or long-term unemployed or seeking to return to the workplace. So we do lots of workshops around employability and mental health and disability issues.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. And obviously, people know me. I'm Safer, One Place's creative facilitator, working on a creative project here at One Place East. So today is World Mental Health Day. So Andy, we have three lovely guests with us. So I'll let you introduce them. And yeah,
we have Raj, Louise, and Carl. If we start, I'm just looking at the screen with Raj. Just introduce yourself to the listeners.
A big hello. My name is Raj, and we're delighted to be part of this broadcast today. This is a very special broadcast for me, especially it is while it is about the World Mental Health Day, and it's supposed to be released on that particular day. So yes, we're excited to be a part of this exciting group with Carl, Louis, Andy, and Cedric. Thanks for inviting me, and look forward to the session.
Louise?
Hello, I'm Louise Street, and I have actually three working experiences. I first of all became a teacher and taught for 23 years in schools in Essex, as it happens, 3 schools. I then thought that I would retrain and become self-employed as a massage therapist and reflexologist, and I did a lot of work on relaxation too. And then, because I didn't really charge much for my sessions, I wasn't making a lot of profit, and I was sort of in my late 50s by then, and thought I would take early retirement because I'd saved throughout my working life, and that would give me some money, tide me over till my teacher's pension, which I did. And I'm very glad I did, because it gave me a year with my husband, who after that year, sadly, took his own life. And that put me into a hospital for a couple of months. I then had home treatment team, community recovery team, all helping me get back. And then the trauma psychologist suggested that I do some work for NELFT by becoming an involvement rep with lived and living experience. And I've been doing that since 2021, and I'm involved with training for the new risk formulation, and also helping to redesign the risk formulation documentation. I'm also working on a project that we're starting in Waltham Forest to put a totally different way of providing mental health services for our borough, and we're starting in the Leighton area. So yeah, quite a bit of experience. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a lot. I just wanted to add, with the reflexology, I sort of discovered that about 25 years ago and really got into that. And probably like yourself, I couldn't work out how to make money from it. It didn't seem to be profitable, so I kind of gave it all up. But I still rate it as a what would you call it? As a therapy, treatment therapy. Yeah.
definitely. Very good for relaxation.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So over to you, Carl, if that's okay. We can hear from you.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Louise, for your sort of overview on your mental health experience and what have you, and reflexology. I'll take this separately, but I'd like to be on the receiving end of receiving it, not so much like you, Andy, giving it. So maybe one for me to have, because I think it's not an experience I've had yet, but one to open up around therapy. But so as you heard Carl and Nandoo, I live in the Greater London Borough, southeast of London, and I've kind of had a bit more of an awakening to mental health and the experiences that lived experience from a unpaid carer's perspective in terms of supporting my parents, but also my brother, who was in and out the system, and has kind of opened up the door to a trauma and a bereavement I never realised. And sometimes it's the catalyst around experiences in life to either have the lived experiences you mentioned, Louise, being on the involvement register, having a patient's voice. So I'm on that same process for South East London and Maudsley. And in terms of the programme for patient and carers, understand it because for the last year, I've been involved in the strategy and getting involved in supporting and leaning in, particularly around disability. Half of the reasons that I'm on this platform here is because a friend of mine, Isaac, great friend of mine, and it's around advocating, it's around disability, it's around mental health. I find them all particularly interlinked with each other. So in terms of the roles, just to give a heads up, so I do a bit of a governor role, so being a voice for the people in the community, challenging those that are in accountability around the health support that we get. We can moan, we have to have a voice, and it's about challenging that voice and challenging the authorities. And recently a new role in terms of as an associate hospital manager. And that's very much more about being an advocate for those people like you and I that need the voice, as opposed to the medical professions that sometimes get clouded with over medication and the personalised care pathway that should be required for people to have intervention rather than having the challenges they have, which is not the right and full support. So the fact that you've mentioned you've had good support from the home treatment team and within the NHS, it's great. Not everybody has the same experience. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's probably me, Andy, giving a quick snapshot into my engagement around mental health, but also protecting myself around my own mental health and the challenges that we have.
Just go back to when I started here in April. This was, I kind of didn't realise it at the time, but I've kind of realised it afterwards that I started this job in April of this year, but prior to that, I was working and I'd given that job up in December of 2023 because it was stressing me out. I was becoming unwell through the job I was doing. Obviously, when I started the job, I loved the job. All the people there were great. Everybody was supportive, but it just got to the point where I just had to stop that job because I was having days off sick. I wasn't physically sick. I was just mentally sick, couldn't cope. And in the end, I just stopped the job. And in the sort of in the intervening 3 months before I started here, this job wasn't advertised. I didn't see it. I was recommended by somebody who didn't know the full extent of my mental health at that time. Oh, you're not doing anything now. Why don't you go? There's a job going here. And then I got like 10 job offers.
Oh, wow.
Some were part-time, some were, all these little jobs, but I just wasn't interested. I'm not interested. Anyway, I kind of came along to where I'm now, One Place East, because the person who recommended was a very good friend. I've done it almost out of loyalty to my friend. Oh, I better go to this job that he's, Anyway, I came here and I walked through the door. I thought, bloody hell, what? This is great. I don't want to leave. So it felt like home. So in that respect, I think that I know now, but after being here a few months, why I think I felt like that is because everybody who works here and comes here and visits here, I think experiences the same thing, where you are listened to, you're valued, and I kind of just knew in the first 10 seconds that it was going to be an environment that would be able to understand my mental health and support me. And that's been the case. Part of World Mental Health Day we've got on the notes here is how do workplaces support you in doing that? And it's a question that it's difficult to answer. Louise, sorry, you had your hand up there, yeah.
Yes, I quite agree. I think, and I do get this now from my involvement rep work, actually, of feeling that I've been seen, heard, I'm validated and encouraged as well. And that, having those experiences actually provides like a corrective experience for adverse childhood experiences, like not being listened to or being told what to think, and not and being full of fear and anxiety, which growing up I actually didn't realize was a sort of a mental health condition, really, or thing. It wasn't until I was in my first job teaching that actually I was running this session with some students, and one of them suddenly opened up about his adoption, and we were all listening and validating him. And then I went back to the staff room after the lesson, and I was in absolute tears. Luckily, I had a colleague who was really supportive, and she listened and heard what I said, but it had triggered something from my past, because I was actually adopted and had always had an issue with the stigma of being adopted. Yeah. As it was then, that, you know, I was adopted in 1960, so it was a very different world to today. Mm-hmm. But I hadn't, I mean, at that point, I mean, we're talking my late 20s, I hadn't opened up really about my adoption, maybe to one or two friends at uni, possibly, but certainly going through school, I would lie. I would say, oh, well, my mum has Spanish in her, which actually she did have, or, oh, it's my dad's Welshness, that's why I'm brown. But that's a strain in itself, having to tell lies and be on the lookout. So if, you know, at work, if you have to get back to the seen, heard and validated, if you can have that around you with your colleagues, but also from the management team, it makes so much difference. And certainly I, even yesterday in a meeting, which includes involvement reps, and we're co-producing. So we're actually from the start devising formulation training and devising what should go on the forms now. So we've been working on that for months now. And one of our sort of leaders of those projects said in the steering meeting how appreciative she was to us for our contributions. And I don't know, it sounds such a small thing, but it means so much to your own mental health and well-being, especially if you have doubts about yourself. So
Definitely, yeah. It's that validation. Was you going to say something there, Carl, as well? Add something to
that.
Yeah.
I think great topic you mentioned, Louise, about workplace, and I think you mentioned it as well, Andy. And like myself, my work environment is going to change, and it's a real big difference because mental health and these are the associations I now find that are the common links, is being at home, about being accessible is one thing. If you struggle to get out of your home, you struggle with mental health in the first place. So my thing really about mental health was all about understanding disability and accessibility. Those are the two links straight away, because as you and I both know, Louise, you know, in terms of care and support, it starts with the community. If you can't be in the community, of which now the NHS really focus on the community, and so does, let's say, our new health minister that's talking about health and care, and we've seen a lot of stuff on the television around mental health and the effects of people's passing. So sorry for your loss, because that's also challenging, because bereavement sits in that. I had a moment yesterday of real awakened clarity around my own challenges around mental health. And it was listening to a podcast that kind of started the journey as well. So James Arthur, who you've probably heard, I think it's James Arthur, that the voice singer that went viral, talked about mental health and where he came from, but set the trauma from the beginning of where it was. And what I realized was mine started with bereavement, which I didn't even realize until yesterday. And that was the loss of my brother, who has psychosis, and I've not spoken to for many years. So now I'm in the system, it kind of dawned on me in terms of why am I so drawn to this area? What is it that's calling me, and having to revisit. And I think therapy has also helped me think a little bit more in terms of the first stage of the therapy, which, you know, understanding the process are all things that are now starting to make sense, because mental health is a confusing area, as we all know. If it made sense, we would have a prescription for it that makes life easy. It's so complex, like dementia and all the other things that come with it. Not one size fits all. It doesn't. It comes in different ways. So thinking about also the loss of bereavement with my mum with dementia, but also thinking about my dad in terms of his accident, being in a coma for 3 months in rehabilitation. All of these things have just kind of opened up in terms of the support infrastructure that was needed to support my mum as a carer who now needs care, to support my father, who's a carer, who's now caring for his wife that's passing with dementia. The same thing for my mum, and all. There's a lot of stuff impacting that. And I think, as you mentioned, the involvement register and having a voice to be able to discuss points of changing around the therapy that's needed, whether that be psychotherapy, whether that be generational trauma, whether anything that's going to be the trigger that causes stress, has been one that I've kind of shied away from. And now it seems I'm opening it up, particularly with the effects that it's had with people, like complaints and like racism and discrimination. All these elements are contributors.
Thanks, Carl, and then Louise for sharing your stories and trying to navigate this discussion. What better to cite an example of how the stigma affects rather, I mean, while I've signed up for this broadcast, I'm personally going through bereavement. It's only 3 weeks back that I lost my father.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and I've been trying my best to hide that, and I did not open up to even the podcast while I was given a chance to introduce myself. So the story goes that since last 3 years, I've been going through extremely difficult time with my father being diagnosed of giant tumor on his knee. I was running helter-skelter to get attention on it, to get the right organizations to have a look at it, because and then somehow, after struggling and going through that trauma of feeling the pain, being in that anxiety over the last 3 years, eventually I could not do so. In the last 40 days or so, I went through the pain of getting him amputated. His leg was amputated, and I was still trying to be support. I was devastated. It was a terrible state. And eventually, while the signs were that he was improving one day, another day the doctors were saying nutrition was not enough for him, etc. And eventually I lost him. So these experiences, and while my brother too, who was with me while supporting my father in last 3 years, 1.5 year back, the young chap, the pressure was such that he could not deal with the pressure, and he too, uh, he passed away as a cause of the pressure that the situation was building up. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to cite this situation as an example that how even while we're in this sort of forum of podcast and talking about it, how someone like me is still feeling pressure to hide the story. So thanks to Louise and Carl for encouraging me to share these bits, and I'm sharing this experience. I mean, it has taken a lot of effort from me to to dress up and just be in front of the camera. Thank you.
Sorry for your loss. I mean, I fully, understand. It's and loss, I think, is so key to this. Bereavement, loss. I know that's had a significant effect on my mental health and my performance in the workplace. Yes, with my most recent loss of my husband, Colin, but his demise was, we can't know for sure, but on reflection and all the learning that I've done through the Recovery College in Waltham Forest, and also the continuing weekly peer-trained and led trauma support Zoom run by One Place East, where we learn about different aspects and how it affects our mental health, and also support each other so that we know we're not alone. So he had significant losses, work losses, but also bereavement losses, even when he was 16, a significant bereavement loss. And that all, I think, contributed to his escalation in his mental unwell-being. 1997, I had a road accident when I was working, which was severe whiplash as an injury. My work then were great insofar as they allowed me a phased return, because I wanted to return. That was my goal, because at that time, my main focus was on doing what's right for others, being there. So I did want to get back, but physically it was a challenge. So the phased return was very good. I think that really can help. Bereavement support. If you don't know it's there, you're at a loss. You're on your own with all those big feelings. Certainly 2 years later from that accident, I got married. 4 days after my wedding, my father died. He couldn't make the wedding. He'd had a stroke. The day before, I mean, I kick myself now because I wasn't aware or even looking at my own needs. The day before his funeral, I'm at work because there was this meeting about a child that I thought was really important to be there, which it was, but my needs at the time, my need to be with my mother, it didn't even occur to me. When my mum died, sorry to go on, but when my mum died, I actually went to my doctors and they put me in touch with the bereavement service, and that really helped. NHS bereavement service, and it just gave me that support that I needed then. So yeah, bereavement, loss, there's a lot to mental health, definitely.
Yeah. I think, and Louise and both Raj, I'll say both of you, loss is hard, and I'm blessed and I'm lucky at this moment. I still have both my parents. So whilst I understand what loss is like, I've been to about 9 funerals this year, probably more than I had in the pandemic. and dealing with people's challenges and bereavement is a lot, particularly when you retune into yourself. And I'm doing that at this moment. I've kind of before put this barrier up, and as you said, Raj, try to carry on, but it comes to a point where it starts to eat and eat and eat. And it's sometimes the fact that you've shared your story and it's not public that you do want to do that. You're trying to digest and deal with bereavement in your own way. So you coming out and saying this amongst someone I've never met before, thank you for being honest. And thank you for feeling that it's a safe space, because I guess this is one of the reasons why I'm here, invited by a trusted friend who said, Carl, do you know what, there's a podcast there, I think it might be quite suitable for you. It's not really what I do, but it's something that I should be doing more of. And that's really about having a voice, echoing where there can be some change, because it's not just about voicing, it's about driving change. And it's about setting an example for what's needed as well, but also sharing your story, because that story is there, and for a chance to feel comfortable with someone that has an understanding and a feeling that you can relate to. And care is the fundamental thing. It's mental health, but care is the number one. And I think sometimes it's retuning into that. So, and with yourself, Louise, I think, as I said, understanding the bereavement, and bereavement is something I haven't faced properly yet. I faced it within myself, but actually the counselling element came up yesterday. But also I have a couple of people that do bereavement, certified bereavement. So what you have done, both Louise and Rod, is pushed me a little bit down the route of having to reach out to a service that I know I'm going to need. I need it now anyway, because I've just accepted bereavement is probably one of the catalysts around mental health and how I've had to try and deal with that myself. So it's a full circle, but the experience is about forcing the hand and bringing those people to the table where the energy is right and it's aligned. So yeah, from this call, I will be making contact to the two people that I need to.
Yeah, I think what I mentioned as well, Carl, is what Louise said about the bereavement counselling that she received. It's when I was going through the beginning of this year through my, I suppose I call it depression, from leaving a job and not having another job to go to and not even wanting another job. Financially, I was like, oh, how am I going to cope? I didn't care. But my GP was very good, actually, and put me through to the NELFT services. And I had it wasn't counselling, it was a resilience. They called it a resilience and mindful course, I think. It was a 6-week online course. And I was very skeptical. I thought, this is going to be a load of rubbish. But I kind of needed to do this to get through to the next stage of my treatment, if you like. But it was something I wouldn't have done off my own back, but I was kind of felt I was forced to do it. But having had this 6-week course, it was really helpful. It taught me loads of stuff that I probably did know, but didn't want to think I knew or didn't want to do. Or it made me realize actually to make yourself better, you've got to make yourself better. You've got to help yourself, rather than relying on someone to help you. There is that bit of you actually got to help yourself a little bit sometimes. And
it's sometimes having a structure and a template to be able to focus your mind on the steps that's needed. And when someone's gone,
I think that's right. Yeah, I think in my mind, I know what I must do, but I couldn't quite work out how to do it. You're right. This 6-week course gave me the building blocks and the structure to manage through that and come out at the other end. And here I am now having a job working. So
there we go. There is light at the tunnel. I think there's light at the tunnel, and I think the only thing I will say is that how I've tried to deal with the bereavement in a way that there's been lots as a menace. When I speak to people, they go, "How many have you been to?" It seems like I've had more than the bloody pandemic. With COVID. Coincidentally, there was a lot in COVID, but I've been to a lot this year, and we're on top of COVID. These are the effects after COVID, and the effects of the economy, and the stresses of housing, and the stresses of all of the factors. And I've been trying to work out, why is it so many? Constantly going to these and realizing that those losses come back as angels, and I believe, in my opinion, that they help us get through the period where we have the vibrations and the energy that sometimes gets us through to the next stage. So where there's a loss, there is a remapping of that individual spirit that will be following you and guiding you like it has done just now on our call at the moment. That's what I kind of find and tune into, to find the inner strength, because as you said, mental health is hard when you're on your own.
Yes, yeah. I mean, this is quite a rich conversation that we're having, and it's amazing how open we are all being. And I think that safe place is, or that feeling of it being a safe place, is a crucial thing. And I think if the workplace can feel safe, I know partly what prompted me to leave teaching was Ofsted and that particular Ofsted team's way of operating, not acknowledging what had been done, just picking holes in stuff, putting pressure on, so you didn't feel seen and heard or encouraged, as we said before. And I mean, we know how that ended for that head teacher. Was it last year, I think? So you do need work structures to be aware of these things as well. I mean, I knew that self-compassion was important. It was important to be confident. I'd done all this sort of, I'm interested in psychology and the way, what makes us work, what makes us not work. But it wasn't until this complete tragedy in my life, and actually Sue Morgan's course at the Recovery College, where I suddenly found or discovered that my outbursts, because I would fly off the handle if I couldn't handle things, I would self-harm, I would throw things around. I mean, yeah, berserk, really. That wasn't something wrong with me. That actually, I'd always thought there was something wrong with me, and I'll say why I thought that in a minute. It was a nervous system dysregulation because of fight, flight, freeze, fawn, those strategies that we adopt, because in our past, and particularly probably our childhood and our upbringing, we've not had the learning of how to, say, cope with big emotions such as anger or loss, sadness, fear and terror. We haven't thought about asking for help, because we've got to struggle through and do this and be strong and do this by ourselves. We haven't perhaps grown up in an environment that talks about emotions and how to deal with them. And we haven't learned from that. That understanding, that learning has been so monumental in transforming how I now operate. I know in my last job, I was head of the department. Would I accept much help? I felt I had to be doing everything on my own, despite my wonderful colleagues all sort of helping. And I did begin to learn how to delegate and help, ask for help and get help. But it wasn't an easy thing, because I felt that was a weakness, I suppose.
It feels, we are more so, but I think in the work places that we have that more at the front of their sort of thinking. Sorry, Carl, you put your hand up. Was you going to say something there?
Yeah, I was going to say something just to reflect on you, Andy, Raj, because Louise, being and seeing a lot around people talking about mental health, we know that men struggle quite a lot. There's particularly in my borough, in any borough. I understand that women struggle. I understand all struggles. But what I don't know if you found, Andy, and maybe Raj, in terms of your perspectives, that whilst we have challenges in mental health, disability challenges in terms of understanding, because that's an area in itself that's focused on, men itself are probably the highest numbers in terms of mental health and affecting the system to a degree. but yet it's not often I'm in a space where there's men talking about mental health. There's more women talking about mental health than as opposed to men. So it's quite nice for a change for men to outnumber women in this space. It gives me great hope that we can actually formalize a conversation with men and inclusive of women. But at the moment, it's quite interesting that we talk about mental health and a lot of the people that are driving the changes. And I challenge this now, not that one can define mental health and who it sits with, but who's representing and being honest and driving the change for mental health. And in a way, it's a bit like mums looking after their boys, but in the kind of love and attention in a way that we let people kind of narrow it down and advocate for us, whereas men should be advocating for themselves.
I mean, I don't know if anybody has heard of the Proper Blokes Club. This is a mental health.
Did you say Proper Blokes Club?
It's called Proper.
It sounds like a good night out, Mandy. Proper Blokes Club.
It's called Proper Blokes Club, and I can send everybody the link. But it's
send me the link, please.
It's a club for basically for men to talk, because traditionally, as you said, men don't talk about anything apart from maybe football and beer, and perhaps the opposite sex or the sex that they're attracted to. So they're the kind of what's perceived as the traditional things men talk about. This was a charity that started, or a group that started out of lockdown. There was a guy in South London called Scott. He was a football coach. He was going through trauma. He lost all of his work. He was self-employed football coach. Didn't have any work through lockdown, and was going through trauma. And he found he couldn't have. There was nobody to help him, so he just put a post on a local Facebook group. I'm a bloke going through some mental health issues. Anybody want to meet up and talk about it? And he said, I'll meet at Lambeth Station or wherever it was, I don't know. And one bloke turned up. So this one bloke had a chat. Oh, that was good. Next week, he put a post out, 2 people, 3, 4, 5. And then all of a sudden, he just had blokes turning up and talking about their mental health. And then it went from people from his neighbouring borough, can you do a walk near us? And it spreads. And now, after 4 years, I think he's in 8 London boroughs, and he's now give up his football coaching. He says this is now as he started a CIC, and it's his full-time job running this Proper Blokes Club.
Amazing. So, that's great news.
But for me, I went to this one meeting. It was just great to know if I wanted to, I could talk without being judged. But also, it's about listening to other people's experiences and just thinking, that black bloke, that person needed to talk just to get it off his chest. I haven't got any answers, but I'm just listening.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. Now that you brought up Proper Blokes Club, and taking a cue from what Carl and Louise spoke just before you. Now, just trying to digress the discussion towards the possible solutions while you came out with this particular initiative, Proper Blokes. And from what Louise mentioned about how Sue Morgan's sessions helped, and Carl repeatedly talking about energy of people and how like-minded people coming together can help good initiatives come and succeed. So the point that I'm making is I'm an energy worker. I'm an energy healer as well, and I've conducted few sessions for One Place East for meditation sessions and sessions about healing, purification. My personal story goes that while I was going through that difficult last 3 years, but I was conducting meditation sessions, etc., as a way of life, healing myself, looking at myself, looking at my energy, and then eventually also going out and then conducting sessions for Nelft, a few places like Good Maze Hospital, at Jane Atkinson Center, and also at One Place East offices. So this, while we're talking about in terms of what support system can help, I think one of the important piece in the toolkit would be managing your own energy, because eventually, by the rule of astrophysics, we all are nothing but tiny droplets of energy. If we can channelize ourselves it works to the best. So yeah, maybe meditation, healing, looking at our own energy first. These would be extremely important at the time that you're going through your own mental health issues.
I'm coming to East London, and I want you to be able to bring some East London good energy, right? Now, so it makes me feel better when I come through there, because as most people say, it's a bit like a nosebleed. If I go to north to south, I get a nosebleed. It's how I feel. Okay, so I'm going to take you up on that, Raj.
Carl, I'll meet you off the Woolwich Ferry then.
Perfect. Sounds good. You know what I like is that personal engagement, because it's uncomfortable when you don't live in your own manner. It's nice to have someone that knows the manner where you live and can kind of give you a comfortable walk and feel through it. And a class is a bit more of a personalised guide tour. So thank you, Andy.
You've got the new Superloop bus route now, so you can get across the ferry, and that Superloop goes directly from the ferry to Ilford. We come off at Ilford, and then it carries on to Waltham Forest as well. I mean, so we can go and see Louise as well.
Perfect. Let's make a day of it. That'd be great to do that. I'll take you up on that, Andy. Definitely.
Louise, go on, Louise.
Sorry. I'm really interested in that Proper Blokes Club, particularly for our new project in Waltham Forest, because we want to bring third parties as well as NELFT services working together. And our data shows that that men, and particularly Black men, struggle with mental health. So, anything that we can do the idea is, isn't it, not to get people where they're at their extremes and they're taking their lives, or they're going into hospital, or they go into hospital, they come out, they go back. That's what we're trying to stop, essentially. And if we can get it early on with understanding, with, as you say, both of you or all of you, realizing and taking on your own responsibility and advocacy. And I think, not wanting to necessarily promote NELF's new approach, but this open dialogue where the specialists aren't doing a top-down, oh, well, this is what you've got, and this is the medicine that you need, or you need 6 weeks of CBT. Go away and sort of do that, and then we'll review it in 6 months' time. It's much more, right, how did you get to be here today? What in your past has contributed to it? And working together in coming up with a care plan, a safety plan, with the plan, buying in. So the person, the service user, I don't really like that phrase, but the person who's using the services has some agency and control, because often the past experiences that have led to anxiety and stress have been because we've not felt any control and been out of control.
Yeah, so it feels like the person is controlling their own treatment, if you like.
Yeah, which I think's therapeutic in its own self. Yes, we do need the expertise of professionals, for like the bereavement counselling or CBT or whatever it is, but it's working together and being rated like involvement reps, as we are, experts by experience. What a lovely phrase.
Yeah, I think when you see things from the NHS perspective, or within it in the terms of the structure, which is what we all need to try and help us get through things like social prescribing, which is what Louise is talking about, where, Raj, we come from an ethnic background. The way that our communities do things are different sometimes to the general. And it's about the holistic way sometimes to provide remedies and therapies to treat us. So when we talk out and say, this is where we are, feel a bit broken, being in depression, I mean, I'll be honest with you, depression can be clouded in terms of how you deal with it. I know I've been in depression for quite a long time, but it's been in denial. But it comes a point where I suppose it seems like a light bulb moment or something catastrophic happens that, like anybody else, can send somebody into a place where they need to seek help. And in some cases, it's straight down to Section 2, 28 days in a psychiatric ward to be assessed, because you've, not being funny, it can go from 0 to 100, but you go to 100 and it's a flip of the switch which someone else says it's a safeguarding issue. And before you know it, you're in a place where you're catapulted and you are completely lost trying to find your way. And I think there's lots of us that have been on the edge. The question is, when we talk about the edge, what does that mean to you? And what does that mean to be able to get yourself from the edge back into the center, to be able to take control? And I think sometimes that's the honesty about what is it, because it can trigger any time. But the key then is, what's the cure, and how can we stop each other going from the edge again? Because once you've been once and you look down, you go, excuse me, it's a bit, it gets dizzy, it gets cloudy. And as soon as you get back into the center, you make sure you don't want to go to the edge again. You want to be able to control how you do it. It's that lost place is what I realize now. And this probably goes back to what you said, Raj. Sometimes finding that energy and that place of peace to be able to answer your own questions. But sometimes we ignore it, and then it hits us right in the face. And we land up on the floor and we have to get ourselves up.
I can't agree more with Carl, especially because of the environment in which I have grown. The phrases like, men do not cry. These have affected the whole structure of being. That you have been through that. That you can't cry, you can't come back home crying. You can't sit beside your aunties and mom and complain. You have to be with the blokes. You have to take charge of the house. So this sort of upbringing affects us. And while there are some initiatives that support, like proper bloke clubs, these need to be publicized. The stories need to be brought in public so that people feel encouraged to acknowledge. And then also to come back and share their own stories, as if it could become a big peer support initiative where we all feel comfortable that I'm not alone.
I will say, Raj, that I've heard NELF East London are doing a great job engaging the community when it comes to mental health, as Louise has just said. And it's interesting because this meeting happened last week with somebody quite senior in healthcare. Very similar to service delivery in a mental health trust. So they've come from one part of East London. I'll share the example, and even the staff, because from the inside of people dealing with mental health, what we've got is people that are supporting us with their own mental health challenges in that mental health industry. And when the NHS can't recognise the staff that need their own help, and don't get me wrong, phase into work and what have you, it's quite catastrophic. Because I know several people, even with advocacy, I was in advocacy. I had my own mental health challenges going on, be it my own organisation, makes no names, didn't really see it. And then we have this challenge around coaching and well-being and trusted advocacy and safe place to feel, well, hold on a second. We have discrimination and racism. And when I mentioned, I'm from South East London, well, we really know we have postcode wars, mental health challenges there that used to go on. We both mentioned about our cultural background. Well, I'll share mine because I'm not from South East London. I actually was born in Luton Airport, which was quite close to a very ethnic area. Berry Park was the place I used to live and walk through all the time. So a different culture. So a place called Milton Keynes, and then I had to face concrete cows. Who puts concrete cows in a city? I've never heard of that. I thought I was going nuts, to end up in South East London. But ultimately, my parents come from the Caribbean, so my background is very much more from Grenada and from Guyana. But in terms of cultural-driven culture around mental health, in fairness, mental health is not seen in that way within the Caribbean. It's seen as something to shy away from. I know the same thing from people from Africa. So the Black culture and mental health is in some ways was a taboo kind of some conversation we just don't have. And to be able to open up those conversations now, like you've just said, Raj, is, you know, for me, it's about culturally appropriate support that sometimes is needed. And to have someone from a different background that understands how things are. This is probably why we're reshaping the NHS and why the NHS is leaning on its community to make a difference, whereby lived experience stands for what it is, particularly when they are struggling for money, and I said, are struggling to maintain their own staff that have mental health challenges, that are going to go off sick, struggling to go back to work for one reason or another. And when you're in those community service provisions, struggling with your own mental health, trying to underpin the community, it's quite tough. It's kind of it's a bit like a hamster wheel. You feel like you're going round and round, but the question is, yeah. But now we can see some visions because the hamster has been freed and it's not contained. It's actually got some place to go and enjoy its journey.
Yeah, I think you're right there. The hamster going round is a good analogy. And it's now, I think, it feels like, for me anyway, there's the hamster's got options now. It doesn't have to keep going round and round. It can see, as you said earlier, Carl, like the light at the end of the tunnel. You can see, oh, there's a service here, or somebody has mentioned something there that I can go to. And there are lots of things available, but the hardest step is for that person to take that first step, I guess, and go out their front door and attend a service in person or online. That's the biggest step. How do you overcome that? And I'm not sure we have an answer. Well, we don't have an answer for that, do we?
I think this opens up another door for another conversation. I'm going to have to jump off because, and the reason why I've got to jump off is because I'm on, a bit like yourself, Louise, was an involvement minister around healthcare. And this is a framework that I'm supporting, which you're probably aware of. It's called Patient and Carers Race Equality Framework. I'm part of that in South East London. And we've got our next call to talk about strategy, how to engage the community. So from one show to the next.
We've been talking for an hour now, so that's I think a very good point to wrap up. Thank you very much, Carl. All the information that you've asked for, Proper Blokes Club, we can send to you guys and that, and anything else.
And don't forget the invite, Raj, so I can put it in my diary. And Andy, you can put it in your diary, which is I'll come to meet you, or you're going to come and meet me. I'm going to come in East London. So we'll have a proper boys club catch up. How's that?
Yes.
Sorry,
okay,
Louise.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good. It's lovely to meet you all.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Carl.
Everybody